Hey guys, welcome back to the second week of Graphic Design 2 GRD-142. We're going to do the Greats of Graphic Design assignment this week. And so what I kind of want you to do is delve into a little bit of history of graphic design. And I think one of the cool things about graphic design is that historically we can go into that from a visual perspective, right? So the world of graphic design forever has been truly changed by a great number of graphic designers, creative individuals who have wanted to leave their mark on the world by taking things that we don't really think of as entertaining sometimes, right? We think of as like a simple label or a logo or a package design, something that isn't always maybe the most exciting to most people, and wanting to make it stand out. And so I've listed a couple of very prominent graphic designers across the world, across time, that have moved and been movers and shakers and have truly changed the world of design as we see it. So I want you to look at them, right? We have got a couple different ones: Aaron Draplin, Milton Glaser, Chip Kidd, Stefan Sagmeister, Paul Rand, David Carson, Paul Asher, and April Greiman. I want you to, instead of just writing a paper, we're going to actually create a poster. I want you to choose one of those graphic designers, whoever you choose, up to your choice. I want you to choose one of those graphic designers, and you're going to create a 8.5 by 11-inch poster that kind of gives us a little bit more perspective about who is that person, what did they do to make the world of graphic design change. What did they do? Where are they from? What did they do to get there, right? Were they formally trained? Not all graphic designers have been formally trained from a proper, design program. Some have gone and learned and been self-taught. What are some of like the most famous things that they are notable for? And so one of the biggest things I want to make sure that you understand is, as you're creating this document, I do want you to use Photoshop, whether you have a lot of experience using Photoshop at all, whether you're in the Photoshop class currently. I'm going to walk you through how to make sure you can set that up, and how you can bring in pictures and how you can type with your text/type tool. The big thing I want you to call back to from Graphic Design 1 is using the principles and the elements of design that you learned during that first course about how to make something feel balanced and how to make it feel like it's harmonious, aka making sure that it's not just slopped into the page and just kind of randomly slapped everywhere on the page. So let's go to Photoshop for a sec. We're going to create a brand new document first, and then I'll delve into, for instance, as an example, I'm going to use Milton Glaser as an example. So I'm going to go to Photoshop. I'm going to create a new file. I can either do that there or by going to File and Create New. The first thing I want to make sure of is that my increments is set to inches. And so again, it's 8.5 by 11. If we want to do that horizontally, or if we want to do that vertically, it is up to you, whichever direction you wish to go. The only requirement that I have is that, again, it's 8.5 by 11, and that we keep a 300 resolution. I want 300 resolution pixels per inch because I want a high quality piece that could be printed out if we wanted to print it out. And then I always recommend, in everything we do in any software, to always start with naming our file from the get-go so we don't have to worry about that later down the road. So for instance, I would do N global Greats of Graphic Design, and then I would click Create. So the name, 8.5 by 11 inches. I'm going to do a vertical poster, resolution 300, and I'll leave color mode as RGB for the time being. So as we create it, we have our poster right here. It is a blank page, a blank canvas that we can work with. The next part we want to understand is, how do we use the text tool and how do we bring in pictures, right? So just like in Illustrator, the text tool, the type tool is your T tool right there. Once you click it, remember that your text tool is set automatically to a horizontal type tool, which means it will type horizontally. If we want to type down the page, if we want to kind of shake it up and instead type vertically, we could choose the vertical type tool. And so what that would look like right now, let me increase the size of this, right? The options bar at the top of Photoshop gives us, right now I'm on Myriad Pro and regular for my typeface. It's at 12 points, which would be pretty tiny. So let's do 50 points. And then I'm going to click right here. If I were doing vertical type, I want you to see how this is being typed out, right? So again, you're not restricted to simply having to stick with a horizontal layout. We can do however you want to handle it, right? Change the colors, right? So if we want to change the colors of the text, I can Command A, select everything there. I can also literally highlight if I wanted to. Change the color to be something else. So if I wanted Milton Glaser, right, he's really well known for his I Heart New York poster and logo that he created after 9/11. So if I wanted to create kind of that same red effect of his I Heart logo, I could do that. Change that. If I want it to be thicker, right, so I could click my Milton. If Myriad Pro, as an example, has a bold type of font family included, you could do a bold or black version of it so it's thicker and kind of more impactful. You can also make it bigger so that it's taking up more of the page, right? And then just move it with your move tool after you do that. You do want to make sure that, again, everything is within the page. So for instance, we can see that this is going over, so I would need to size it down some so that it can actually fit. And I can use my move tool, line it back up, and get it there, right? If I wanted to use a shape tool to put a box behind it, right? Like let's say, for instance, I wanted to use the shape tool. Instead of it being black, let's do this so I can color pick from a color picker. So again, I just clicked that little box right there. You can also click any of these swatches and choose one that you want. Since I've got red, let's balance that out with, I feel like for this I want to go with kind of a lighter green like this. Let's not go Christmassy. Let's go with kind of a lighter red right there. So I'm going to click my color, I'm going to click OK. With my shape tool right now, if you look, if I were to right click on it, I'm on my rectangle tool. So I, for instance, could just draw from here, from the corner of the page, down, kind of get it lined up with my text for the name of the artist. What I want you to see with Photoshop, of course, is that Photoshop works with layers. Over here in our layers panel, my rectangle is sitting above my text layer for Milton Glaser. So if I want it to be below Milton Glaser, I just need to drag it below. Notice that little blue line that appears. I'll drag and drop it, and then we can see that Milton is above it. If I want it to stand out more, let's say, for instance, I want my text to have kind of either a drop shadow or I want it to have an outline of some sort. In my layers panel, right, I click on Milton Glaser, aka my text layer that I'm trying to affect. I can click on the FX button right here, right, which is my layer styles. And then I can choose any of these layer styles to apply to that layer. So for instance, if I wanted a black stroke or a white stroke, I could click stroke. That menu for the layer style is going to pop up. It's going to look like this. The size right now is 1. It's actually set to inside, which if I were to keep on increasing this, notice it's going to eat away on the inside of that text. So I don't want that. So I want it to set it as outside for the position. So it's going on the outside of the text. Right now it's on black. I don't mind that. I want to check and see a different color, so I'm going to check white instead. I like that a little bit better. So let's do that. We'll decrease a little bit so it's not too crazily heavy. And then I'm just going to click OK, right? So as you're setting up your poster, I want you to think about, as you go and do your research, who is this person? What do they look like? What are they about, right? So that's going to mean that you're fitting in a lot of information on this page, both visually and written out, right? You're not writing a paper. You're visually creating a poster that tells us all about this person. So the vertical type worked well for Milton Glaser's name. I probably realistically would want to change back to being on a horizontal type tool and changing probably down to 12-point font so that I can actually have, I'm going to Control or Command Z to undo that because I am still highlighted on that. So I'm going to click off of it so it is not highlighted. Use my text tool. And again, I can bump this down to 12. Probably bump this back down to regular or italic if I wanted to kind of change it up, but use that same font family. And then typing in the information I want by just clicking and then talking about who that person was, right? So Milton Glaser was best known for. And then let's go for looking for some of the information, right? As you go and you research about the person, right? You can look at images to obviously see kind of what their most famous works were, right? We know that, of course, again, I said I Heart New York as one of his most famous designs, as well as the Bob Dylan poster that was included with the album back in the day. So include information that's both visually and descriptionally talking about the designer. Tell the person who would be looking at this poster more about that person. Let's say that, for instance, I want to include a photo. So, for instance, the I Heart New York logo that he designed, right? Everyone sees this, and he is the original designer for it. So I'm going to save that image as, right? I'm going to save it as I Heart New York. Save it to my downloads. Make sure that that format is a JPEG. In Photoshop, right? If we want to place a picture, we want to place embedded any type of photo we want to use. And so I Heart New York, we're going to place that image. Notice that when I place an image in Photoshop, we have a box around it that basically lets you size it down or up before you finalize kind of like what you want it to be and how you want it to be looking like. And so obviously I don't want it to be too big. I want to balance this out with other photos. So maybe potentially I want to shrink it a little bit so I can have another photo of another design he's well known for over here. Once you're done with changing the size and how you want it to look, like what size you want it to be on your page, you can either click the plus or the check mark at the top, or you can hit enter on your keyboard. That'll finalize that action. Just like with your text that I just showed, right? You can apply a layer style to a photo. So if you want this picture, for instance, to have a border, you could have it as having a border, right? You could do a stroke and have it as a black. So I'm going to change that back from white to black. And it could have a black border, right? So that it can be kind of standing out on the page. I could do that. Or if I wanted just to have it a little bit more subtly, I could do a drop shadow, right? If I click on drop shadow, if I increase my opacity and kind of go at a different angle, notice the drop shadow that's kind of increasing right there. As I increase or decrease the distance, I'm increasing or decreasing the amount of the shadow and how harsh it is. You can see an example of that over here, as well as behind the picture. So I could click OK. That would be a nice way of placing that image on my poster while making it stand out from a white page, right? And then lastly, before we go to like making sure how you save it out and all that jazz, if you want to change the color of this background color, right now it's set to white. We can always go up here, choose a different color. So let's say I wanted to do kind of that bluish tint. So let's go about here. If I'm clicked on my background layer and I've found a color such as blue, if you look down at your keyboard, you can do Alt backspace or Alt delete or Option delete. And that's going to fill that entire layer, the background layer, with the color that I chose. Okay, so you can keep it as white. Just understand that it shouldn't look like just a plain piece of scratch paper unless you purposely tried to make it look like that. I think that using colors and getting comfortable with color, especially as a designer, is your biggest feat that you should get used to. Remember, again, you can use your move tool to move either pictures or text to make sure they line up how you want them to line up so they look like they're unified together. Once you're done with your project, you're going to want to do File, Save As, right? And so we're going to do Save As, save on your computer. We want to do two things. We want to save it as a Photoshop file, right? Notice that as this format is clicked, we can see Photoshop and all of these. We don't want Photoshop PDF, we just want Photoshop. So because I typed it in originally, ngobel greats of graphic design.psd is there. I can click Save. As this pops up, I can click OK. Maximizing compatibility is perfectly fine for now. I'm going to click OK. If I want a JPEG of this, a high quality JPEG so that it's visible, I can do File, Export, and export as a JPEG, right? So as this menu pops up, it's going to give you a preview of what your final design will look like. Remember, again, you want to save while you're working a Photoshop file so you can come back to it. A PNG or a JPEG or any of these types of graphic files will condense everything down to one layer. So if you're done with your project, that's when you're wanting to export out as a final JPEG. So we're going to choose JPEG. We're going to do quality as great. We always want it to be the highest quality photo we can get, which puts us at 2550 pixels by 3300 pixels. I'm going to click export. It's going to pull up, hey, look, where do you want to save it? This one's trying to save to my documents. I want to save it to my downloads. Keep with the same theme of where I'm saving it to. I'm going to save my JPEG there. And so that means that I have my PSD and my JPEG. My JPEG, again, is going to be flat. My PSD is workable just like your AI files were in Illustrator. So make sure that just like with most things in our program, as you are going and as you're submitting multiple files, that means that you want to create a new folder, right? So greats of graphic design. We want to put both the JPEG and the PSD inside of that finished folder, right? And to be able to submit that folder, we need to compress it or zip it. We're going to compress that file. That means that we're going to get a .zip file, and that is the file you will upload to Moodle. If you have questions at all, please make sure you reach out. Please make sure that you're reading the description. Please make sure you watch this video, hopefully. And if you have questions at all, reach out. I hope that you guys have a great day. I hope that you stay safe, make smart decisions, and I will see you soon.